Hey you guys, it's Sarah here and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, this is DIY Busy Books. It's where I normally show and share how I make little children's felt activities, toys, mostly busy book activity pages. So they're soft, sensory, quiet books, and I share a lot of templates and tutorial videos on here. But in this video, I have been meaning to make this video for a while because I get every now and then I get emails from some of you asking me about any advice or suggestions if you are also wanting to start up and sell some of these busy books. Some of you have made your own child a busy book just for fun using scissors and felt and hot glue or maybe some sewing, and you, like me, discovered how much fun it is. So now you're hooked and you're like, oh, I love these, and you could sell them. And so I got a couple of emails even just this week, and I thought it would just be best to make a video about this because it's too much to type out. So yeah, I'll read you a couple of the lines from some of the emails just to give you the nature of what I'm going to address in this video. So the first one is exactly the situation that I just shared, where she made a busy book just for her own child and now she's wanting to start doing some markets. And this is what she says. She says, I'm curious for more feedback you may have to share from yourself or other people who have started this just as a farmer's market business. I'm seeking guidance to whether or not to invest time and money into the equipment for this business or not. Super good questions. So first question is mainly about starting at farmers markets and how do you know just how much time and money you ought to do this, if it's something you're going to really stick with, and if it's worth the initial investment. Here's the other email from another fellow mom who says that she's been looking to start a home-based business, which this has been a very common theme that I get from mothers, because that's a really good thing to consider if you're at home with the kids, having a home-based business, if you're looking for a business or something to generate income. She said she loves the busy books, she loves this idea, she's been a teacher, a former preschool teacher for 11 years, loves the idea of having sensory things to minimize screen time. This is another big plus of busy books. And so she just says she's wondering if there's any tips on the best way to get started. And she, like me, lives in just like a middle class, small community, like country bumpkin kind of style. Like I don't live in a big city where things tend to be more expensive. I'm in Southern Ontario, Canada, so everything is expensive here. People don't have a ton of money to drop on children's toys. And so she says, as the weather becomes warmer, she's looking at starting some small craft shows. Now, these are great questions, and before I come on the internet and give any advice, I'm just going to give you a full warning, full disclosure. Take everything that I say with a huge grain of salt. I am not this like business guru. As much as I love listening to these uber successful like millionaire like Alex Hermosi and Cody Sanchez and like the sharks from Shark Tank, Kevin O'Leary and Robert Herjavec, is that how you say his last name? Mark Cuban, Elon Musk, like all these uber successful business people. I love listening to them. I'm not saying that they're wrong or anything, or that I refuse to take their advice, but my advice that I'm going to give, or the things that I'm going to say, are going to be very different than what they would say. And it's not because I think that they're wrong at all. And I do still listen to them. I get motivation, I get inspiration from them. I love them. It's just that I don't apply and live by that advice myself. And so I'm not going to come on the internet and advise you to do it as well. I know that my audience, most of you are women in my age category who are very likely mothers. And don't take this the wrong way. If you are a woman, I believe women can do all things, but I don't think that the main target audience of those big business gurus are mothers of young children. And absolutely no shade on any of those people, but all of them, or the vast majority of them, are either don't have children yet, or they are not the sole caretakers of their children. Like maybe they have a spouse who is a stay-at-home parent who is like mainly responsible for the kids, or they may have children, but they built a lot of their wealth before they had children. And so the message, if they were talking to young mothers, I am super confident that none of them would address it in the same way that they might be addressing a young single person who is just getting started and doesn't have those responsibilities, doesn't have the financial responsibilities, and has a lot more time than what young mothers of little kids tend to have. And so it's not that I don't believe in the advice of going after the hustle and staying up late and pulling an all-nighter and getting up super early and working harder, outworking the competition. And it's not that I don't believe in all of that stuff. In fact, that is a part of my life. I haven't really shared that on the internet before. I was a single mom for 5 years with two children, and I did not receive child support for a couple of those years. I had to go to court. It was a long, awful experience, and I had that weight of being the sole provider for me and my children. I was a single mom. I worked full-time as a new teacher, which, if you know teachers, new teachers especially, they have to work about 4 to 5 hours outside of school hours doing prep work and marking and getting prepared, because they're literally kind of starting a lot of stuff from scratch. So when I was a single mom, I was working full-time. My kids had to go to daycare. I really didn't have a choice. And the weight of that I really felt the weight of the sole responsibility, the sole financial responsibility of providing for my family. Like, what if something happened to me? What if I, heaven forbid, became disabled or got hurt or lost my job or couldn't work? How would I manage to pay the bills? And just for a little context behind this, when I got divorced, I really didn't have any money. I initially moved into a friend's basement with my daughter. I was actually pregnant at the time with my second child from that marriage. And so I was still leaving though. I still got divorced. And so I moved into my friend's basement. She was an angel. And so me and my daughter lived there. And that was not a permanent like living situation. And so eventually I didn't really have anywhere to go. I ended up moving in with my ex-husband's parents, which they are wonderful. They are angels of people and I love them dearly. They're the grandparents to my children. They've been nothing but wonderful. So, but regardless, the point is just to kind of paint, like, I had a pretty desperate situation. If you're in a situation where you're getting divorced and you don't have anywhere to go, you move in with your ex-husband's parents, that's a little weird. And so I'm super grateful for them and that I was able to do that and had that option. But my point is I had to work really hard. What ended up happening is my sister, who was working full-time and who was single at the time, she was working in Toronto, which is a very expensive city. She wanted to buy a cheaper home in a smaller town and become a landlord. And so when I was in search of a place to rent, she was like, okay, I'm gonna buy a house and you can rent it from me. And so she gave me a great price on rent. I was able to move into my sister's rental home and I got a great price on the rent, and that gave me the opportunity to save. I worked full time. I eventually ended up buying a duplex because that financial weight was so heavy. And I thought, what happens if something happens to me? I can't just live off of my sister's charity. I don't want to do that for the rest of my life. I bought a duplex. My boyfriend at the time, who is now my husband, was also very into that, maybe for different reasons, but for me it was like fear-based, and I figured if I get a duplex, then at least I could rent out that apartment. If something were to ever happen to me and I couldn't work, I would have that income to cover a big portion of the mortgage at least. So crazy hustler me in my late 20s, working full-time at this point with two little kids, one of them going to kindergarten, one of them in daycare. I bought a duplex. It was a very crappy rundown duplex. The main floor was 2 bedrooms. So I went from downsizing from living in my sister's really nice, cute little 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home, and I downsized into this 2-bedroom apartment with a 1-bedroom apartment in the upstairs. It was really run down, so I had to spend a couple of months after work like cleaning it, painting it, pulling out mysterious hair and other items and maybe a dead mouse here or there, pulling those out from the vents. It was really gross. It was really quite awful. Now I can look back on it and it's not upsetting at all, but at the time it felt so heavy and so lonely. But I was doing that hustle that the business gurus really talk about, and I was like, after work every day, I'd pick up my kids. I had my parents, so sometimes my kids would go to my parents' house, sometimes my kids would come with me. I would drive 25 minutes over to the next city where the duplex was, get to work there for 3 hours, cleaning, painting, changing the floors, making it nice and ready to move into. I'd come home. I'm trying to also like get the kids supper, get things taken care of, get ready for the next day. 8 o'clock at night comes, I get on my computer and work that 4 to 5 hours getting ready for the next day of work. And then at the same time, I'm also trying to prepare to move because I've given my sister notice, my landlord notice, and I want to be out of the house and get moved. So all of that, it was basically like days started at pretty much 6 a.m. and then by midnight or 1 a.m. I would end it for the day and I'd go to sleep. And I am not someone, I cannot function off of 5 hours of sleep. But regardless, I did that, which I think is the kind of work level I think that these entrepreneurs and these business gurus advise. They definitely promote like pulling all-nighters, getting up late, staying up late, doing what no one else will do. I did do that for a couple of months, and eventually I moved into the duplex, got it done, and I'm really happy about that. But I have to say I'm never going to do that again unless I absolutely have to. My life is totally different now. I am married, my husband works full time, I'm a stay at home mom, and so I will never do that again because as inspiring as it is, and as well as it did work out for me, thank God I had God with me the whole time. Even though it worked out for me, there is a dark side to it that doesn't always get talked about, especially if you are talking to a woman with small children. The dark side or the hard side is that, yeah, you make sacrifices. You are not as patient as you want to be. You don't have, when your kid is sick at school or sick at the daycare and you have to leave work and you can't go and do these things that you're trying to get done, instead of being like healthy and patient and like, okay, that's okay, they can come home, they're sick, they can come home, it's like you're frustrated, you're angry, you're annoyed, you're so stressed and overwhelmed that something as simple as your child being sick, it's like it's a big deal. And there's just so many examples like that where it's kind of sacrificing things as a mother, but then also there's a health aspect to it. When I was living that life, I got sick so much. I was sick all the time during that 2 months of having to go and work on the duplex after working full time and providing for my kids. And also, by the way, dealing with a lawyer and having to go to court for child support and those issues. That is just too much. And I never want to do that again. And literally there was moments where I was driving, maybe it was after work and maybe I had one of my kids with me and the other kid was at a grandparent's house, and I literally started losing my mind. Like the best way that I can describe it is how I imagine people who are starting to get dementia, things that start to happen to them. So I remember distinctly I would be driving after school and I suddenly didn't know where I was. I'd be on the highway and all of a sudden I didn't know where I was going or what I was doing or what time of the day it was. And then I had to pull over and stop and close my eyes. And I remember looking in my back seat and I had one child with me. And in my head, I'm thinking, what am I doing with this child right now? Am I taking them to daycare right now? Am I on my way home right now? Am I going to the duplex? Am I going to their like who has my other child right now? And like you literally start to lose your mind. And this would happen when I would go to work, which like I said, I was a teacher. So there was days when I would go to work and I would start my lesson that I had prepared at 1 a.m. the night before. And the kids would be like, Miss, you told us we had a test today. Like, what are you teaching us in your lesson? And I'd be like, oh yeah. And like last minute printing off tests for my classroom, like bad stuff, and a lot of it where your mind starts to go and you start to have these health problems. And so that's kind of the dark side of that hardcore, like invest all you have, put all your time into it, like go all in. That's a bit of the dark side, and it worked out well for me and I'm grateful that I did it. Thankfully the memory issues are subsided now that my life is not like that, but it's scary and I would not advise that on anyone unless it's something you have to do. Anyways, I give you all that background just to kind of disclose that that's the reason why I'm not going to come on the internet and advise you like, make sure you dedicate this much time a day and stay up later at night and do what no one else is going to do because you've got competitors. And that's just not how I'm living it. That's not my own goals. That's not how I'm defining success right now in my life. And so if that's the kind of thing that like you are wanting, whether you're a mother or a single woman or whatever you are, if that's the kind of thing you're wanting, probably don't listen to this video because this is going to be way more chill, and that's not something that I'm trying to go for right now, and that's not what my goals are right now. So bringing you up to speed on my life now. This is like 10 years, that past come and gone. 10 years later, my kids are now 13 and 9 years old. They're very independent. I'm remarried. My husband is awesome. I really like him and I love him. And he works full time and we rely on his income to provide for our family. And because of that, I don't have to work. We've also done other things, like for example, we rent out. We have a big old 1800s house that has lots of rooms. We rent out some of the rooms, are basically an upstairs. We have an upstairs apartment, and so we rent that out, and that helps offset and alleviate the cost of only being a one income household. And so my goals right now are not to like hustle like I did back in the day. It's not to build some like multi-million-dollar thing. My version of success is being able to have a side hustle, a little job that I can do at home while being a stay-at-home mom, that is the priority first. And as it is right now, I'm perfectly happy just getting a part-time income from that. I put part-time hours into my business. I'm perfectly happy if I profit part-time money from it. And then I would also define having success, and in my mind I'm like, okay, if anything were to happen to my husband and he could not work and it fell on me, I know that I could then put full-time hours into my business and I would be able to get a full-time income. This is like, you are, if you're like me, you're a stay-at-home mom, maybe you have hobbies and you like to craft and there's some craft shows in your area and you want to sign up and see if you could actually earn some income, a little income to either save or to help out with the bills, because it is super hard nowadays being a one income family. And then another thing I'll show you that I have not even like announced on my personal Facebook is, can you see that? Can you see that belly? That's a 6-month pregnant belly. So I have got another baby on the way. This is my first baby in about almost 10 years. And this is the first baby that I'm gonna have where I don't have to go to work. Like, I don't have to go back to work. I don't have to put them in daycare. And so no shade if you are a mom and you have your kids in daycare, but I had to do that with my first 2 kids. And now that I have the opportunity to actually be home and not have to have that stress of going back to work and worrying about money on my own, there is no amount of money that you could offer me. There is no amount of progression in my own business that you could offer me for the price of not being able to be at home with my child or putting my child in daycare full time. Like, you could offer me say, here's a job for $1 million. Will you, have your baby go back to work for $1 million? No, I'm not doing it. And that's not because I'm rich or already have $1 million. I don't. It's just because I've never had this opportunity before in my life. I don't know if I'll get it again. And so my priority and my success, the way that I'm defining success, is being able to be at home with my baby and simultaneously, in spare time, low pressure, build up my little handmade business in different ways. What that might look like is, let's say in some months, like this just happened last in December and November, I was getting a lot of online orders, obviously because it's right before Christmas. I did not shut down my website, but for example, a business guru would not advise you to shut down your website. Whereas if that happens to me again in December, as grateful as I will be for those orders, I will also have a little baby, and I'll just turn off my website while I fulfill the orders. Or if it's getting too much for me, I will just say, sorry everyone, we're closed for a couple of weeks. Whereas, like, that's not the advice you're going to get from like Kevin O'Leary or Elon Musk or whatever, but that's the advice that I would give, and that's how I will be living. But that's kind of the context of the person and the background and the lifestyle of who you are listening to right now and who you are maybe potentially taking advice from right now. And one other quick thing I'll disclose, I don't like talking about my income on the internet. It feels so cringy and exposed and all that stuff. But I do see some handmade people who become content creators eventually. And as someone who is now on YouTube, not that I get much from YouTube, I am monetized now on YouTube, which is super cool. So I might get $100 or $200 a month from YouTube. And then, but I've seen content creators who also do handmade businesses, and they're talking about and promoting selling what they sell, but really their primary income is through their content, and they don't disclose that, or they're not fully upfront and honest about that. My primary income, in terms of the whole picture of my business, not in terms of my household, but just in terms of my business, the primary income is still from actually making and selling busy books through markets, through my online store, and through one physical store location that I'm in that does pretty well. I also have a great little group subscribed on my Patreon, which is a monthly subscription. So it's basically me selling my templates. And so I have that income as well. But even with that and YouTube combined, most of my income from my business comes from actually making and selling the books. I don't expect it will stay that way, especially once I have my baby and I don't have the time to make and sell books and attend markets. I'm not going to be attending markets pretty much at all this year. Like, I'm already really big and it's uncomfortable setting those things up and carrying tents and all that. So I have not signed up for any markets this year. And I expect that over time, social media, YouTube will grow, and maybe my Patreon will grow. So over time it may switch. But as of now, when I'm making this video and giving this advice, my primary income is also, like, it's still from actually making and selling books, at markets and in stores and in my online store. So if you're wanting to sell busy books, let's talk about getting started and what your startup costs might be. Some of the things that are the biggest costs are going to be a sewing machine. However, you don't need a fancy sewing machine. And even if you don't sew, you don't know how to sew, but you still want to make these, you can still stick to pages that only require hot glue. That's not ideal in my opinion, but it's something that you can try just to start yourself out with and test the waters and see if you enjoy doing it. See if you think it's something that would be worth buying a sewing machine. It's always worth it to learn how to use a sewing machine just to know how to do a basic stitch. And my sewing machine was like $150 on Amazon. It's a great little machine. I think it's a Singer machine, and it was just one of the cheaper machines that was on Amazon. It's a relatively low cost because you do not need a fancy sewing machine. You just need a sewing machine that really just does a straight stitch, and you need white thread to go with it, and that's pretty much it. Then there's of course the cost of felt. Now when I first started making busy books, I was using a cheaper, thinner, stiff felt on Amazon. I'll leave a link in the description to some of the felt that I still actually use for the back sides of my pages if you watch my videos. I don't use that felt for the actual pieces or the front page itself anymore. I've kind of upgraded to a really nice Korean, thicker, smoother, kind of more buttery felt is the best way I can describe it. The thing with felt is that you can go to your local dollar store and buy sheets of felt. They're soft, they don't maintain their shape, they flip-flop, they're not the nicest quality. If you're making busy books, you want to use a stiff felt, which you can buy on Amazon, but it's a thinner, lower quality of felt. It's hard to show you on camera, but in person, if you are using that and then you switch to the Korean felt, you will totally see and feel the difference. But when I first started, I didn't even know about Korean felt. I was just trying to find a stiff felt. And so when I found that on Amazon, I was so happy with that. And that's what I used for like the first year and a half of doing markets and making these books. And then over time, I discovered Korean felt, and now I solely use Korean felt, and I buy it directly from a manufacturer, a factory in Korea, and I buy it by the hundreds of yards. Like I do big, giant orders. I have to work with customs. So that's why I have it for sale available on my website, but I use it myself. And the Korean felt is much more expensive. Even the price that I pay for like direct from the manufacturer, buying it in bulk per 12-inch by 12-inch sheet of felt, that is still more than what I would pay for a sheet of 12-inch by 12-inch felt on Amazon, if that's that lower quality stiff felt. And so that Korean felt is going to cost you, if you are buying this from me or from Legacy Felt or from sellers on Etsy who are selling this felt, it's going to cost you at least twice as much per sheet than what the cheaper felt on Amazon will cost, which is a lot. I love the Korean felt. That's what I use. I do think it's worth it, but if you're maybe just starting out and you're testing the waters, maybe just stick to the Amazon felt. It comes in packs of like multicolored. You get one of all sorts of different colors. And so try that first. I always would get mine in 12-inch by 12-inch sheets and 8-inch by 8-inch sheets for the pages themselves. And then if there are particular colors that you're using a lot, like I would always use a lot of red really quickly. I would always use a lot of white and black and green and blue, like those primary brighter colors. And so I would order these sheets of felt from Amazon and then I'd run out of those colors. Maybe try to do a combination of using the sheets from Amazon and then buying some of those main colors that you end up using most often. Buy those individually from from a company that sells felt wherever you want to buy it from. And I don't have an exact cost for that, but I would put aside like $100, maybe $200 for getting all of that felt ordered. I would also be very minimal with buying fabric. So when you go to your fabric store, look for the clearance sections first. Don't worry about buying a ton of it. Like just maybe get half a meter, or sorry, if you're in the States, maybe get half of a yard or a little more than half of a yard. Maybe get 20 inches of fabric cut for yourself if you see some fabrics that you like. If you're just starting out and you're testing the waters, I don't think that the goal should necessarily be profiting first. I think that your goal should be making sure that people are going to buy it, making sure that you can at least cover your cost and profit a little bit, and just making sure that you have the market in your community. Make sure that markets are something that you actually are willing to do. You might try your first market and you might absolutely hate it. That happens sometimes. And so if it's not something you want to do and you're like, okay, I hate selling, it's super painful to talk to people. I'm so like, you can overcome those things, but if you just know up front you don't want to do it anymore, then that's fine. You don't want to do it anymore, and you don't want to have all this fabric that you don't end up using. I know that Joe Rogan has said that with his podcast, he did not profit anything from his podcast in the first 5 years, which is hilarious now that you know, like, he's the most successful podcaster. I've heard Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank, talk about if by year three is when you should be at least by year three profitable. And so, in my opinion, if things are not super profitable up front in your first year, it's because you're going to have these expenses and you're going to be figuring a lot of stuff out. So don't be super hard on yourself if you're not that profitable right away. But because of that, there's also, of course, that hesitation of not wanting to buy too much and take on too much cost. So yeah, like I said, I would do a couple of $100s put aside for a sewing machine, a couple of $100s put aside for felt, some fabric if you want to add fabric to your pages, and then other things like a hot glue gun, fabric scissors, the hot glue sticks, the mini hot glue sticks, and some Velcro. Those are like kind of the bare bones, and then you can stick to pages that require only those materials. As much as I love those little buttons and the cute little trinkets and all these fun craft things, as much as I love going into craft store and buying all the things, I don't recommend doing that. I would recommend just forcing yourself to kind of stick to the bare bones to start out with, so that you don't end up buying and spending all this money that you may not have. Binder rings is one other thing actually that I wanted to add. Sorry I missed that, but you will need some binder rings if you're going to be selling them the way that I do, which is per page, and then I just connect them with binder rings on the spot at the market. Now the big question is cutting machines. Do you buy one? So a lot of women, I know you already have the Cricut cutting machines. I use the Cricut Maker 3, but in the first little while that I sold Busy Books, I was cutting everything by hand. It's not that I don't recommend cutting things by hand, it's just that it is much more difficult to be profitable when you're cutting things by hand. However, I don't necessarily recommend buying a cutting machine right away, because like I said, your goal right away is not going to necessarily be to be profitable. Your goal up front is to just test the waters, see if it's something that you really enjoy, that you think you could do, and see if there's people in your community who will buy from you. See how the markets are and kind of test that out first. Even if you're not actually getting paid for all the time that you're putting into. I'm sorry, I know that's controversial advice when it comes to handmade people, but when I was first doing it, I was not getting paid for all the time that I was putting into my books. It wasn't really profitable. But over time, if you've proven to yourself that you enjoy it, that it's kind of working, and that you can foresee it's something that you continue to do, then over time, save up some money for a cutting machine, because they're really expensive. The Cricut that I have now, the Cricut Maker 3, I really like, and I'm not getting like sponsored or anything to say that. I wish I was. Cricut, you can hit me up. But I use the Cricut Maker 3. Whatever cutting, there's other really great cutting machines out there. I think the Cricut Maker 3 was like $600 here in Canada. So it's a big fee. It's a big purchase to make if you are just starting out and you're not sure, and you're testing out markets, and you probably won't even really sell hardly anything at your first little country bumpkin market. Like, you're gonna be terrified. I would not recommend going out and dropping $600 on a cutting machine. I would do it by hand just to start. It's going to be painful. You're going to have aches and pains in your hand. It's not a sustainable way to make busy books, in my opinion, because you will get carpal tunnel, you'll get arthritis, because you can't just be cutting out these pieces all day. It's not sustainable. So do it at first and just do a few markets and see how they go. Try to get a little profit, maybe $100 here, $100 there, save up for a little bit, and then I would recommend getting the cutting machine. Preferably you have a sewing machine and you are able to either learn, or you already know how to do just a straight stitch, and then you'll get better and better as you sew more. It'll be really quick as you do it more often. And then just cut things by hand. Just get a good pair of fabric scissors. I pay $8 for my fabric scissors, and they're really good. I buy them when they're on sale. And then, so you can get fabric scissors that are like $60. You can buy really expensive fabric scissors. I just buy them for $8. You can use my templates that are my PDF printable templates. Feel free to use those. Pick the ones that you enjoy making, or that you think you could handle making multiple copies of, and just do it by hand just to start. Eventually, if you love it and you get the cutting machine, you'll just be so thrilled. It'll save you so much time and it'll be great. But just prove to yourself first that it is something that you really want to do before dropping that money. And that's really the only advice that I have for that. Again, just the big thing is don't worry about like buying things in bulk and getting things for the absolute cheapest price. You can think about that because maybe in the future, if you do end up wanting to do this like more and more, then you can look into putting more money into it and buying things in bulk up front, and that will lower your costs a bit. But to start, I would not worry too much about trying to buy things in bulk, because what's going to end up happening is, yes, you will have more of the item and maybe per item it is less expensive, but you're going to have to put up a big fee up front to buy things in bulk. And so I wouldn't worry about trying to get the absolute lowest price right now. Right now, the goal is to kind of just test the waters and not take on too much risk, in my opinion. And again, that's another piece of advice that maybe the business gurus would not give you. They might actually even say the opposite. They might say, you got to get the good equipment, you got to make it profitable up front, you got to invest all this stuff. I would not do that. If you're like me and you're a mother and, you know, you're on a one income, you have a one income household, you just have to be careful and just stick to the minimum if you're just starting out. And then you can decide maybe 6 months from now, or do craft shows for a few months, for just the summer, for a season. See how they go and see if maybe you want to branch out into other ways of making busy books and making money from busy books, which I'm going to do a part 2 of this video on, by the way, so watch that if you want to see that. And then decide a little bit later, after you've kind of proven to yourself that you do like it is something that you can make a little money from, and then you can use that money to kind of take the next level up. That's the way that I did it, and that's the way that I would recommend my fellow moms doing it if you're kind of in my situation too. And then very quickly, in terms of like getting ready for the actual craft show, don't be overwhelmed by it. When I do craft shows, I literally just lay my pages out flat on the table. I have a couple of videos showing what my craft show tables look like. At first, I did buy a lot of display stands and making vertical heights at my craft shows and just trying to make it look more like a booth. That's what I had read from other handmade sellers who did craft shows. It is nice to have vertical height and to have this display, but for me, I just found being practical and simple, and just as a busy mom already, I didn't want to have to carry and set up and do all this stuff. It was just so practical to have all the pages laid out flat on the table, and then people could come up and see what I had and play with the pages and feel them. That's what worked best for me. If you're just starting out, I recommend having at least 15 different pages. I hope that's not like an overwhelming number, like 15 different pages with a variety of themes. So some of them can be really simple, like just go to your fabric store and see what soft textile fuzzy materials they have. And like I do little, you can even look at my website and look at some of the examples I have. I have sequins, I have little soft fuzzy fabric that I bought at my fabric store. You can use the fabrics in your fabric store. Be conscious of their price, but use those to maybe inspire some of your designs. And then of course you're free to use my templates as well. Pick a good mixture of pages that are simple and that you feel that you could charge a lower price point for. Make that the majority. So like maybe 10 out of the 15 pages, try to keep those 10 pages priced at your lower price point. For me personally, when I sell, the lowest price point I have is $6. And then typically at craft shows, I'll do $6, $8, $10, $12, $14. I use even numbers just because in my head, the math is easier to do. But yeah, if you can have a good variety of some price points and just start out with the lower price points and then have some more more involved activities for a higher price point, that's what I would recommend. So like maybe $6, $8, and $10 activities or something like that. And also consider like themes as well. So maybe you want to have one page that is number themed, and then you want to have another page that is some aspect of sensory themed, whether it's soft or scratchy or shiny or whatever. Maybe you want to have one color matching theme, or a couple different ones. Maybe you want to have a few animals, a few fruits, like just have some variety of themes in there as well. And then you can try to make between 3 and 5 copies of each page. If you're just starting out, you want to have a couple of copies of each page kind of available. I would definitely recommend making multiple copies of a page at once, because that is one of the big factors in what cuts down your time required to make a page. So instead of having like 100 pages and they're all different, just have 15 different pages, but have multiple copies of each of those pages. It'll just cut down the time that it takes you to make those pages. It's just way easier that way. And then you can replenish the pages as they disappear off your table. Also, make what you personally enjoy. This is something, like, a lot of people think that on my website, I must have only the most profitable and popular pages. It's actually not true. There are a lot of pages that are really popular and that sell very well, but I don't love making them. So an example is the dollhouse page. It's really cute. It's one of my favorite activities. I love playing with it. It's got all these little pieces and you dress up the little doll. She has a wardrobe and a bed. It's super cute. And I do make it for craft shows sometimes, but I don't have it available to purchase on my website because I don't like having to make that one on the spot when the order comes in. Even though it's very popular, it's totally profitable, and everyone who sees that page loves it. I just don't enjoy making it. I don't enjoy keeping track of all the little pieces. And I kind of end up enjoying making the simpler pages that don't have a lot of detachable pieces. That's kind of my own personal preference as a mom because I'm always scared that I'll lose a piece. And then it's my personal preference in terms of making those pages just because they're easier to manage and it's easier to store spare pieces of a page that maybe has 4 or 5 cutouts of felt versus a page that has 30 cutouts of felt, even if the page that has the 30 cutouts is more popular and more profitable. And so my recommendation is just make pages that yes, people will like, but that you also enjoy making. And then the final thing that I'll say before I end this video is don't have high expectations going into your first craft show. There are craft shows where I've gone where I have made no money, and oh my gosh, it's so painful when you pay, you might pay 30, 40, 50, you can pay hundreds of dollars to go enter into a craft show or a market. Like some of them are a ton of money. And so you go, you set up, you've done all this prep work, and you're so excited. And, if you're just starting out, you don't know what markets are going to be good. If it's an outdoor one, you don't know what the weather's going to be like. Like there's so many things that just might not yield success, financial success in your first market. But a lot of those things are going to be out of your control, and a lot of it is just going to be pure learning experience. So going into your first market, do not have high expectations. And if you don't sell anything or you don't even make your craft show feedback, don't assume that that automatically means like failure. There was lots of craft shows. Today, I still will do craft shows. In fact, just this past December, I did a craft show. I bought 2 tables. I bought 2 spots. I paid $65 and I did get the feedback, but I think I sold like $100 and something worth of stuff. And it was in December, it was before Christmas, so I thought it was going to be good. It was at a location that I had been at before in the summer, and there was a ton of people there, and I did really well. I sold like $400 worth of stuff. And so I thought, oh, I'll go to that craft show and it'll be great. Nope, it was awful. There was also a storm on my way home, a winter storm. It took me forever to get home. It was just such a nightmare of a day. And so that still happens to me. And I've done hundreds of craft shows. And so if on your first few craft shows they aren't super successful, that's okay. Again, your goal is not necessarily to make a ton of money right away or to be profitable right away like that. The goal is to kind of test it out and see what you like. And there's lots of other ways that you can make money with handmade products or with busy books. So I'm going to do that in a part 2 of this video. I will talk about that. I'll share it on YouTube if you're interested in that. Go take a look at that. And yeah, let me know if I missed anything. If you do markets and you have suggestions, comment below. Or if you've got any questions, let me know. Okay, so this video is way too long. I'm going to end it there. Thanks so much, you guys, for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Make sure you check out the part 2 if that's something that you think would be helpful to you, and wishing you all the success in whatever you choose to do. And yeah, thanks so much. I'll see you in the next one.